Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 180th, 180 Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We starting out with 27 varieties of people. That's the number, that was the average donation to Bernie Sanders. So it's an auspicious number to start with. Great to have you all with us. We have an action-packed a gathering today. Never know whether to call it a show. I think it's a gathering. We'll stick with gathering. We're going to have a Dr. Turbin, a great author, with us in the second half hour up front at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern. We're going to start talking about Pacifica and also the guidebook that we're putting together, the Green Grassroots People's Guide to Election Organizing, a very big deal. We've got the great Jan Goodman with us, TATANKA BRICCA, the chair of the Pacifica KPFK board in Los Angeles. Richard R.'s screen looks like a scene out of Shogun, which I highly recommend, actually. Great series on Netflix. HEDY Trip is with us, our wonderful Minnesota activist, obviously in the middle of a snowstorm. MYLA Reason's with us, my co-host on the Wednesday California Solartopia show at KPFK. We are having the great U.S. Representative Paramila Jayapal is going to be with us. Paul Newman is with us as well. Paul, off from the set of Cool Hand Luke. And today, I want to start with the most important thing going on today, which is the parole hearing for Leonard Peltier. Leonard Peltier has been in prison 50 years for a crime he clearly did not commit. And this is probably his last chance at freedom. He's 79, a year old. You're actually older than me. There's a video of Leonard. That's the website. Thank you, MYLA and Steve, for putting that up. And this is kind of his last chance. So there is a website to write, freeleonardpeltiernow.org, all one word, freeleonardpeltiernow.org. He's also up in Amnesty International. There is a slot on the various websites to write the parole board. It would be astounding to me if they don't give him parole, for God's sakes, 50 years. Everybody who was involved with the trial, pretty much everybody, except the FBI guys, who was involved with the trial of Leonard Peltier, I think there were two way back when, has come out and asked that he be released. If they held the trial today, it would last 10 minutes because there's no evidence. Never was any evidence. So he will not survive many more years in prison. It's amazing he's survived this long, and we need to get him out. So today is the parole hearing from Leonard Peltier. TATANKA BRICCA, do you want to jump in? You're very close in touch with the indigenous community. You want to say a couple words about freeing Leonard Peltier? You're muted, buddy. Let me get you.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're good. Yeah.
I mean, what can you say?
What's that again?
Repeat the website again.
freeleonardpeltiernow.org. I think there are a bunch of them. TATANKA, do you have another website?
No, that's it. freeleonardpeltier.org.
Wait a minute.
And
freeleonardpeltiernow.org.
now, yeah, NOW, sorry.
It's all one word. No dots in there.
No gaps. Just to say, I mean, he's been in there like 50 years. Every president of the United States has been lobbied by everyone you can imagine. Nobel Prize winners, Amnesty International, other presidents. It hasn't mattered. So yeah, it's astounding if they wouldn't let him out, and given the track record, it's astounding if they do. The government seems to have difficulty with freeing anyone who is a symbolic representation of the total misjustice of the use of the FBI around political prisoners. So I'll leave it at that. What you said, Harvey, is even the people that are passed, the people that fingered him that were used in the trial also said that they were coerced by the FBI, by the police. So there never was anything on him.
No, and what's different about this, I think, is, you know, for years and years, we've been asking for a presidential pardon.
Yes.
Here, we're just asking for parole.
Parole. Yeah.
And, you know, that should be easier, yeah?
Yeah, one would think.
One would think. Richard R., did you want to jump in on this? Richard? Are you muted? Let's get you unmuted. There you go.
I just want to make a quick comment. Is there a reason why the chat is not working?
I don't know. Steve, is the chat not working?
The chat is disabled, it says.
It's shouldn't be. Hold on a second.
All right, Richard, is there a reason why you're on the set of Shogun here? I mean, it looks really nice.
Oh,
Behind
sorry
Should
about
be
the chat, guys.
enabled now.
Yeah,
All right.
it's working now.
Okay,
fine.
very good. So
Okay.
yes, please put the links in for Leonard, and we will send out notices and
The
all
only
that.
the only other thing I'll say is that I did come down to LA to spend some time with Reverend Jim Lawson, figuring he wouldn't have long. He passed away today or last night. An amazing hero who Martin Luther King called the architect of nonviolence in the world. And the same thing for Leonard. I mean, you don't want to go through life and say, I didn't do what I could to free Leonard. So let's all do it when we get off this show.
Okay, well, after the show, I will send out to our list again the link to write. I think the parole boards generally don't make a decision on the spot. The only parole board I've ever seen is the one in Shawshank Redemption, where they did let the actor, what's his name,
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman, who was
Yeah.
nicknamed Red, they let him out. So he'd been in God knows how long, but Leonard, you know, this could be our last best shot to get Leonard out. And so go to the website, everybody, write the parole board, write with to Biden. And I sent somebody who's close to Biden a note saying that would really help us on the left to support Biden if we get Leonard out. I'm sure the only people really pressuring him to keep Leonard in is the FBI, which is, you know, not their job, for God's sakes. But anybody who wants any deep background on Leonard's case, in the Spirit of Crazy Horse, is that the name of the book that Peter Matheson wrote? Very long, very powerful book 30 years ago, for God's sakes, or even 40. It just made it very clear that Leonard has never had any business being in prison. He was the founder of the American Indian movement, and has kids. I think he has great grandchildren by now that he's never actually seen in person. I want to see film footage of Leonard Peltier being reunited.
Yeah. Another excellent book is Rex Weiler's book. I think it's simply called Peltier, or Leonard Peltier. He wrote a book. Rex is one of the founders of Greenpeace and wrote a book about Greenpeace.
Right. So this is a big deal, folks. Again, this is going to be his last parole hearing, and one way or the other. So let's just pray that he gets out. Okay. All right. We're joined by Rhonda Roff. Rhonda, we're waiting for the Congresswoman, but you are in Florida, and you've got something to tell us about an upcoming Zoom with Nuclear Information Resource Service. Rhonda Roff, do we need to mute you? You want to jump in? Rhonda, we have you, Rhonda Roff. Okay, we're joined by John Steiner and Camilla Reese. Rhonda, you've got your hand up. Can we get Rhonda Roff in here real quick? Rhonda?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can we help you, Rhonda? Go ahead.
Oh,
please.
no, that's what I wanted to appreciate the NEARS and the San Onofre Syndrome producers, because it's a beautiful film and they're having a Zoom meeting hosted by NEARS tonight.
Okay,
Today
so
is the
tell us
last
about
date.
it. Put the
Uh,
link in the chat. Can you tell us the San
I
Onofre
will, yeah.
syndrome? The San Onofre
I'm so
syndrome.
sorry.
Go ahead.
San Onofre Syndrome. Yeah, I will put it in the chat. I happen to be on the road, stuck in traffic, and that's why I'm having a hard time answering you right now, Harvey. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. So
I will put it up. Today is the last day to be able to watch the film for free, and that's being offered by the Nuclear Free Sierra Club group.
okay, so the San Onofre syndrome is a great documentary made by my buddies in Bolinas, California, Jim and Mary Beth, and they celebrate the successful campaign to shut down the two reactors, the remaining reactors at San Onofre, California. When you go between LA and San Diego on your right, headed south, you see two big nuclear domes, and they are shut. And you will see in this film the great movement, the great citizens movement that successfully forced these two insane reactors to shut down. And so it's a great movie. Rhonda, are you able to put it in the chat, or do we need to?
I'm trying. I'm just at really, really limited signal
No,
right
it's all
here
right.
where
So
I am on the road.
tell us how, MYLA, do you want to tell us about this, MYLA Reason?
Well, I just wanted to say that we just celebrated just a couple of days ago, last Friday, the 11th anniversary of Edison announcing, due to the extraordinary citizen campaign, that they would in fact shut San Onofre. San Onofre had been permanently shut. San Onofre had been shut down, but Edison wanted to restart the faulty generators that they had ordered from Japan, and it was through citizen action that they were convinced to throw in the towel and announce the decommissioning on June 9th, 11 years ago.
It's a huge victory to shut two reactors like that. Of course, the second half of the film, which everybody should see, the San Onofre Syndrome, talks about the situation with the nuclear waste there. And at San Onofre, the geniuses that build these nuclear plants are storing high-level radioactive waste 100 feet from the tide line. I'll repeat that. 100 feet from the tide line, we have a high-level radioactive waste. So this film absolutely worth seeing. Is it possible to post the link, MYLA? Are you able to find it and put it on the?
I just got it just now, and I'm going to put it up.
Okay, thank you, MYLA. What will we do without you?
I put the link, Harvey, to the Eventive site. It's a little complicated. They keep sending you back and forth to the Vimeo, but it is watchable. Just that tonight is the last night, I think until midnight.
Right, and if you put your address in the chat, we'll send you some popcorn. There it is. Wow, it's a great film, folks. Syndrome.
Sluggo?
Yeah.
The Congresswoman is joining us.
All right, wonderful. So thank you for that, Rhonda. Beautiful. MYLA, thanks for posting it. We are joined by the great Congresswoman, Paramila Jayapal, from the state of Washington. Mike, do you want to do the honors?
Absolutely. Thank you. It's such an honor to welcome you, Congresswoman. You've done an amazing job with the Progressive Caucus, who we love. And one of my personal all-time favorite pieces of legislation is your Medicare for All Act, which you've taken over from Mr. Conyers and built on his legacy to improve the legislation. I think it's important for people to understand that it explicitly protects reproductive freedom, which is so important these days. And I think that that should be one of the cornerstones of everybody who's running for office, to protect women, protect families, protect our health, and protect people from going bankrupt because they get sick or injured. So thank you so much. It's such an honor to have you here.
It's great to have you, Congressman. We have 50 people on. We're live webcast on YouTube, and this will be rebroadcast on the Progressive Radio Network on Thursday night. We have a heavy focus on healthcare, and we have a great doctor with us who's active, Dr. Nancy NIPARKO. But it's an honor to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And most of all, thank you for the incredible work that you all are doing to keep our movement for universal healthcare and Medicare for all alive and well. For those of you that I don't know, Congresswoman Paramila Jayapal, I represent Washington's 7th Congressional District. And I also have the great honor of serving as the elected chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, about 100 members of the Democratic Caucus. And just so grateful to Progressive Democrats of America for everything that you do and for having me on today. So as has been mentioned, I am really proud. It's probably my most significant prideful accomplishment to be the lead sponsor of the Medicare for All Act. This is our country's most comprehensive plan to transition to a single-payer universal healthcare system that finally puts people over profits. And it is the change that we need to see in our healthcare system to ensure that everyone can receive the care they need. And every year we have been doing the work in Congress to actually make this a reality. Obviously, John Conyers had HR 676, the resolution for universal health care. Bernie Sanders introduced a Medicare for All bill into the Senate. And this Medicare for All Act is the first comprehensive legislation that shows how we're going to get from where we are to where we need to go. Most importantly, every cycle we get more members of Congress co-sponsoring this legislation. I wish I could tell you that we had all Democrats co-sponsoring it. Unfortunately, the lobby, the private insurance lobby, has been absolutely intransigent in fighting Medicare for all. And frankly, we also have a president who, while we agree on many other things, this is not his answer to healthcare. And so what we have been doing is trying to build the inside movement for Medicare for all. And on the Medicare for All Act of 2023 that I introduced last year for this cycle, we have 112 members co-sponsoring the legislation. That's more than half of the House Democratic Caucus, and thanks to all of you, it also includes many of our powerful committee ranking members, which was a key area that we were focusing on this year again. It's a big number, but it's not enough. However, we would not be where we are without the organizers on this call who have been pushing in your own part of the country to get more co-sponsors in. And so I hope we can continue to work together to make that number grow. We all know that our healthcare system is broken and that more than 25.3 million Americans of all ages were uninsured in 2023. Perhaps the more stunning statistic in a way, I don't know if it's more stunning, but equally stunning statistic in a way, is the number of Americans who were underinsured. 43% of Americans underinsured, meaning that even if they had insurance, it wasn't sufficient to make healthcare coverage affordable. And we have millions of people who are drowning in medical debt. And so I think when we look at the COVID pandemic, we made the argument very clear that healthcare cannot be tied to employment. 27 million people lost healthcare when they lost their jobs. And of course, it was Black, Brown, Indigenous people, and poor people who suffered the worst losses. So as we think about the path for Medicare for all, we also have to be looking at what our enemies, our opponents, are doing, because they understand that the Medicare system is extremely successful. And there is a lot of work happening right now to privatize the Medicare system, because they know that Medicare for all is not only good legislation, it's popular. It's supported by 70% of registered voters. It's been endorsed by over 100 local governments because people know that they deserve and want comprehensive health care. And that includes, as you said, reproductive care. It also includes mental health, such a big issue in our country today. It includes long-term care. My bill was the first bill that included long-term care into Medicare for all. It, of course, includes dental, vision, and hearing. It includes gender-affirming care. And all of that with no copays, private insurance premiums, deductibles, or other hidden fees. And so when I look at some of what we've been doing, our work to secure the first ever hearings in Congress a couple of cycles ago was transformative. It was a big stepping stone to making it clear that we could start debating Medicare for All in the House, and we're going to continue to do that. But I also think that the work now has been to stop a lot of the privatization of Medicare, whether it's ACO REACH or what I call Medicare Disadvantage. These are programs to privatize Medicare, and they're hidden in so many layers of bureaucracy that the average person doesn't even know what's happening. And in their view, we may get to a single payer healthcare system, but it'll be United Healthcare that's providing the single payer healthcare system, not the federal government. So we have a real challenge on our hands in terms of stopping that. Because those are the programs that trick people into getting worse coverage for more money, which means more patient claims denied, more necessary treatments missed, more patients falling through the cracks. One of the things that we've been pointing out, because we're always told that Medicare for All, there's no money for Medicare for All, even though, we continue to give hundreds of billions of dollars to the Pentagon, the only unaudited federal agency in the country. But somehow when it comes to universal health care, we don't have the money. Well, here's the thing. If we were to just reinvest the $46.5 billion that Medicare Disadvantage programs overcharge the government, we could lower Medicare premiums, we could completely eliminate deductibles, and we could expand benefits to include dental, vision, and hearing for all Medicare beneficiaries. So it simply isn't true that we don't have the money. We're just spending money on the wrong things. I think to reach our eventual goal of a comprehensive Medicare for All system that provides healthcare to everyone, we have to ensure that we are preserving the traditional Medicare system, and then we are building on it by reducing the eligibility age, by expanding the benefits, and by electing more people who are ready to take on the private health insurance system and show their commitment with a vote on the House floor and the Senate floor. So my commitment to you is we've shown what we can do together. We've made enormous steps forward, and we can never stop fighting for this because it is urgent. And my top priority that we finally guarantee healthcare to everyone as a human right. So thank you all so much for everything that you're doing, and really looking forward to continuing to build that movement together and getting it done.
Well, this should be the number one issue in this election. It's just killing all of us to see the degradation of the public dialogue when this is the most important issue. My parents, thank God, my mother's mantra in her last years was thank God for Medicare. And what's missed about universal health care is, allegedly a lot of it's for old people, certainly Medicare. But if I was in my 30s and 40s when my parents, took ill, and if it hadn't been for Medicare, I couldn't have put my kids through college. All our money would have gone for their medical care. We wouldn't have had a house. I couldn't have taught school.
Right.
None of that. So, Congresswoman, you are really a saint with this. I mean, it's music to my ears to hear this, and I hope to God we get it. We have an actual medical doctor and a great activist, Dr. Nancy NIPARKO. Nancy, do you want to jump in here with the Congresswoman?
Yes, thank you. It's a real privilege to talk to you. I have to say I don't donate outside of California very much, but I donated to you and your sister, and I'm so disappointed she didn't make it. She needed to be there.
I totally agree with you.
I want to know, we're never making enough headway on healthcare for all, but the ACO REACH is really a big step backwards. And I know you and Senator Warren were pushing that letter. I don't know what happened after that.
Well,
where is it?
Yeah, so ACO REACH is essentially the privatization of Medicare. It's the ability for these private insurance companies to provide care, calling themselves Medicare when they're not, and they're essentially overcharging people, under delivering. The healthcare results are significantly worse. This was a program that Donald Trump put in place, and so it was a real priority of ours to get rid of it. We were not able to get rid of it, but we have been successful at making many changes to the program. It's not sufficient, but we were able to get a number of of the partnerships ended. We have been continuing to push for changes to the formula so that these companies cannot overcharge us, overcharge taxpayers and overcharge Medicare. And so that effort is still continuing. The ACO REACH program still exists. It just exists with better rules, but it's not sufficient. And so we are still totally in favor of ending it. We are continuing to try to do that. We've only made half steps towards it. Senator Warren and I have been pushing, and every single time we're talking to CMS and Secretary Becerra and pushing for changes to be made. The private health insurance companies have a lot of leverage, unfortunately, because somebody in the chat put that half of Medicare beneficiaries are in Medicare disadvantage. That's right. And so what the private insurance companies are doing is they're saying, if you change the rules on us and you make it harder for, you take away the ability for us to charge all this money, we're going to pass it on to the beneficiaries. And so again, one of our strategies has been, let's try to get as many seniors as possible off of Medicare disadvantage back onto traditional Medicare. And that is happening more and more, but we need a real effort around educating people about Medicare disadvantage.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to very quickly slip in because we're going to focus the call on Paul Newman next. We're up to 62 people. One of the major works of these calls is to shut the nuclear power industry. You have one reactor left in the state of Washington, the Columbia Generating Station. Makes absolutely no sense in terms of the environment or the economy to keep it operating. So we can talk about that later, but we want that reactor shut as soon as possible. We have more than enough renewable resources in Washington. You probably know, but today is the parole board hearing for Leonard Peltier. And we are strongly supporting his parole, and I'm sure you've weighed in on that too.
I have.
Okay, as well as getting Julian Assange.
I co-sponsored that resolution as well. Yep.
Very good. Thank you so much. Okay, we got Paul Newman as a regular. He's the only guy on our call that has a picture of Franklin Roosevelt over his left shoulder. Paul, go ahead.
Hi, it's nice to see you again, Paramila. I saw you in Los Angeles a couple years back at Paul Song's house when he had a get together. But anyway, here in California, we had a bill called AB 2200. First of all, are you aware of that?
Yes, I think so. Isn't that the one that
Ash Kalra
was? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. He authored, or he worked with the nurses actually on that one.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had this bill. It passed the the Health Committee in the California State Assembly. Then it went to the Appropriations, and Buffy Wicks, who's a Democrat who originally supported AB 1400, which is practically the same bill, put it in suspension, which means that they needed to examine it for fiscal impact. And the bill is a policy bill, which means that in order to get the 1330 waiver, are you familiar with 1330 waiver?
Yeah, I had the original bill. I gave it to Ro Khanna, but I had the original bill to address the waiver, to make that more available to states to be able to move on universal health care. So Ro Khanna has that bill now when I took over Medicare for All legislation.
Oh, good. But anyway,
so my understanding, Paul, is that we had some good legislation, and Gavin Newsom jumped ship. Is that right?
Well, Gavin Newsom went into the committee and had Buffy Wicks and the other members put it in suspension, which means they want to look at the fiscal impact. But the problem is that bill had no fiscal impact. It was a policy bill in order to apply for the 1330 waiver. So if it passes, they still have to get the 1330 waiver for there to have any kind of fiscal impact. And to me, that appears to be corruption. And I just want to let you know, there are a lot of Democrats and Gavin Newsom, who ran on single payer, have been betraying the people, and people are dying. People are going into bankruptcy. I mean, it's really bad. And this bill would throw out Medicare because it's a better bill than Medicare, because everybody's covered, and it's, the state funds it, and it's privately provided. And I mean, it's just unbelievable. I just want to know what your thoughts about that is.
Well, I haven't closely, obviously I'm not from the state of California, so I haven't closely followed it. I just heard some of the top lines on it. And look, I think this is the challenge, right? We need people who are bold enough and brave enough to take on the private insurance companies and who put a lot of money. I read somewhere that there's like 300 or 400 lobbyists for those private insurance companies for every member of Congress. And I'm sure that's true in the state of California as well. And so I think that is the challenge we have. It is not easy. We should have every single Democrat on Medicare for all, but we don't. So we know what our task is. I'm not daunted. Sometimes I'm, frustrated and angry, but I'm not daunted by what it's going to take to build our movement. And that's why I'm on this call today, because I think it's important that every person is talking to, states can make the argument that if they can't get the federal flows of money from the federal government, then it makes it very difficult. Now, California is in a slightly different situation because you're so big that you have the numbers. But I think for a lot of the country, we need the federal legislation. And in order to get the federal legislation, we need more people who are willing to take it on. And I think that's what I'm working on. And we have a Medicare for All caucus now in Congress. You can check to see if your member of Congress is in that. You should check to see if your member of Congress is signed on to Medicare for All. We also, by the way, have a Medicare for All calculator that I would urge everybody to utilize and use in your efforts, because I think it's a way to show people how much money you would save, and once again to build that that understanding from the bottom up. But I totally hear your frustration, and believe me, I have faced it with my own fellow Democrats who don't want to sign on to Medicare for All. That said, we're getting more and more of them on, and it's a partnership between the movement on the outside and the movement on the inside.
Well, it's absolutely essential that we get this. I mean, having experienced the passing of elderly parents and now being one myself, it's impossible to navigate life in this country without universal health care. It's insane that we don't have it. And you are a true hero for doing this. HEDY TRIPP, do you want to join us from Minnesota? And then Wendy Lederman in Florida. Oh, I had you unmuted. You're unmuted, HEDY. Please. HEDY is a great activist working on safe energy issues
You have
in
turn
Minnesota.
your other instance on. She's got two instances going on.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, please.
Hi, Pamela.
Hi,
Good to
Hetty.
see you. Yeah.
Good to see
Yeah, I met you when I was chair of the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum years ago.
Yeah.
In terms of reproductive justice and health, do you see it being undermined within the Medicare Act, or will that keep strong?
No, I think we are very clear, and we've built a really strong coalition for reproductive justice, for gender affirming care, for long-term care. I mean, we've really taken a lot of the things that have been excluded from our traditional healthcare system and made sure that they are integrated. So I feel like we have we are pushing for healthcare for everyone, everybody and nobody out.
Fantastic. HEDY, did you have more?
No. Good.
Okay, one other thing we do on these calls, Congresswoman, is we are very focused on grassroots organizing, door-to-door personal campaigning. We have the great Ray McClendon on with us. Ray is in Atlanta, and he actually helped organize the movements that brought us the 2 Senate seats in Georgia, the impossible dream of electing a black man and a Jewish guy to the U.S. Senate simultaneously from Georgia, for God's sakes. I'm a historian. I can tell you, you know how impossible it is. Ray, would you like to say hi to the Congresswoman, please? Ray is a generational.
I want to say hi, and we appreciate all of your hard work and everything that you're doing on all of the progressive issues that we are trying to support on the ground here in Georgia, and we're also working through the group that I'm president of, Communities United for Justice, along with Center for Common Ground and Andrea Miller's group. We're working in several states, primarily in the Southeast, to encourage folks to get involved civically and then to vote. And we're doing that through a number of grassroots coalitions. So we thank you for everything that you're doing. And I wanted to follow up on the Medicare for All question, if you would, which is, how do we get more people to understand the significance of universal health care and what it will do for them individually? Because it's the individual pain point issue that I think is most important to galvanizing the support for it.
That's right. Exactly right, Ray. And thank you so much for all the work that you've done to deliver Georgia for us in the Senate. And, you know, we're going to have to obviously continue to make sure that people are turning out both for the House seats, for the Senate seats, and for the presidency. So I really, really appreciate that work you're doing. Look, I think the calculator is an attempt to show people that economic pain point. What do you pay right now? So you can, it's because it was originally utilized, I think, in California, and we asked the makers of it to make it available for everybody. So the Medicare for All PAC funded that effort, and now you can plug into it wherever you are in the country, and you can put in your family size. And so if you haven't used it, I think that's just a great way on the doors to say to people, hey, check this out. You know, let's do it right now. What do you know, how many family members do you have? What do you pay right now in deductibles? What do you pay? And because I think people don't always recognize that they're paying every time you go to the doctor. If you pay $20 or $50, your medicines, your deductibles, if you add all of that up, it's an enormous amount of money in addition to the healthcare premium if you're lucky enough to have health insurance. And so that is one way that we're trying to really help people understand what is the economic impact of this on us. And then I think the other thing is for a great organizer like you, one of the things I've been doing in Congress is having these discussions with members of Congress, just with members of Congress, about how much we spend on healthcare in this country and how bad our results are. And so I think the extent to which you can have community conversations in your areas, you know, bring together a group of people, have people tell stories about, you know, who they are and what they're dealing with as far as healthcare goes. I think that is really, really important, because the more we can make this tangible for people, the more important it is. And then the last thing I would say is focus on your members of Congress, please, because they need to hear from you. And I'd have to go back and look at who in Georgia. I know Nikema Williams is on Medicare for All, of course, but I don't know about the rest of the members of Congress in Georgia. Check your members of Congress for every state, whatever state you're from, and then try to do the grassroots organizing in those districts to get those members up to speed about what is happening, and take people in, as we always do in grassroots organizing, to tell their stories about why the system does not work. I mean, the fact that we have the uninsured is now becoming the new, the underinsured is now becoming the new uninsured, right? Like, these are people who are paying enormous amounts of money for healthcare, and then they're doing GoFundMe campaigns, or they're going into medical debt because they can't afford healthcare. How crazy is that? It's a real crisis just to be underinsured in this country.
It's terrifying. I think most people in this country live in terror of medical problems. And I want to mention Ray has been integral. We're on Thursday, we're going to go live with a website, everything you need to know about grassroots organizing for the upcoming. And I know Mike is in touch with your staff. So we'll make sure that they have it. And Ray and Andrea Miller have been the masters and have taught us all about relational organizing. It's made a huge difference.
Oh,
Ray, do
so
you want to?
important.
Yes, it's the key. It's the only way we're going to prevent a dictatorship in this country. I don't have to tell you. Ray, is there anything you wanted to add in before we move on?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Wendy, I can't unmute you. I don't know what's going on here. Vinny DiStefano, let me jump to you real quick. Congresswoman Vinny DiStefano has been key to the Assange campaign, and also with Leonard Peltier. Do you want to say hi to the Congresswoman?
Yes, first and foremost, you're an incredible Congressperson. You really are. And thank you for your signature on the Paul Gosar's letter. I know it makes for very strange bedfellows, but this is the key issue for us here. If we wish to have dissent, if we wish to have freedom of the press, not just here in the United States, but around the world, the precedent this sets is frightening. However, I'd like to go back to the single payer. I live in the Soviet of California. The Republicans tell us what this world would be like if the Democrats were in charge. Well, we have supermajorities in the House, supermajorities in the Senate, pretty much every elective office. Our governor and our Congress refuse to even bring single payer up for a vote. And we all know why. Because if they voted yes, they lose all the money from the pharmaceuticals, the HMOs, and all of the other people that fund their campaigns. If they vote yes, if they vote no, well, then they lose the voters. So no vote means no health care. And if we can't pass it here, what do we need to do? Because the sad thing is, even 65% of Republicans, when single payer is explained to them as you've just done so well, and 85% of Republicans agree on something, and our elected officials refuse to listen to what the people demand. Well, we don't live in a democracy then. We live in a dictatorship and not of the proletariat. So what can we do to overcome that reticence of Democrats to do the right thing, as they refuse to do here in my home state?
Well, I think you have to hold them accountable, right? You have to hold them accountable. You have to make it count in the elections. People who care about this issue have to be really clear that this is a top issue and that they need to see progress, but you also have to organize on the inside and the outside. And you guys did. I'm not saying you didn't. Like, that was an amazing effort to get it to the place that you got it. But I think I was on a call with Ash shortly after. I think that they didn't have enough votes. That's what happened, is what I heard. And so this is a frustration in Congress too. I mean, we don't have enough votes. And so we have to figure out, because the political system is based on the number of votes you can get, you have to figure out how you can get that number of votes. So it really is the grassroots organizing. Again, I would just say that the state-based, there are a lot of challenges. I think California can overcome them because of your size.
The sixth largest economy in the world.
But there are a lot of challenges with not having, it's why Roe's bill, my previous bill, but the bill that Roe now leads on state-based universal healthcare is important, because you need to find a way to get the federal funds to come in. This is a problem that Vermont actually had as well when they passed universal healthcare at the state level, but then they weren't able to access the federal funds and the whole effort sort of fell apart. So it ends up being a reason why a state can't do it if they can't access the federal funds. But I also think that this has to work at a national level. I mean, I think,
of course,
we need to get those, because most of the California members, I think, are on Medicare for All. There are only a few of them that aren't. But this California state legislature, people run on it because it's popular, but then they don't follow through. And there has to
do away with Citizens United, perhaps, and take the money out of politics, and then they won't have the power.
Exactly. That's HR 1, which, we passed in the House multiple times. And if we can get the trifecta back, that is at the top of our list, is the structural reforms to really make sure we're changing the rules that are benefiting the wealthiest corporations and individuals instead of working people.
Right.
Sluggo, I don't want to interrupt, but I understand that the Congresswoman has a hard stop now. And we would
Okay,
love
well,
to have
listen.
you back because we're just scratching the surface of all the wonderful
Yeah,
things you're
you're a
doing.
great guest. Thank you so much. I want to point out very quickly, we also had a deal with Gavin Newsom to shut the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant, and he backed out on that. So I just want to keep you posted on that. We do not want more nuclear power. You are a great guest. I hope you will come back. We have 73 people with you and live on YouTube and the whole deal. So we certainly support everything you're doing with Medicare for All. And whatever you need from us, let us know. We'll get you the guide to grassroots organizing. You don't need it, but we'll spit it on them.
That's why I love being with you, because that's what I did for 2 decades before coming to Congress is grassroots organizing, and I still believe that that's the answer. So thank you all so much. Check your state members of Congress in your state. Make sure they're on Medicare for All. That's one thing I would ask is just turn up the pressure if they're not to get on as a co-sponsor in the bill. And thank you, Progressive Democrats of America.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Take
you.
care.
Take
No
care.
nukes.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you again. All right, that was great. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank
Except
you.
we're not
Mike.
the Progressive Democrats of America, are we?
Well, we can be for the time being if you want.
Mike is.
Anything we want. We're easy. So listen, Mike Hersh, thank you for getting the Congresswoman. You also got us Jamie Raskin. If you can keep running through. I did want to ask her what it felt like when it comes to Assange to co-sponsor a bill with Paul Gosar and what's her name from the crazy woman from
Marjorie
Georgia.
Taylor Greene.
I mean, that's a mouthful. Anyway.
Sounds like she probably had to take a long, hot shower afterwards.
Well, maybe she did it while she was in a long, hot shower. But anyway, this is great. So I'm sorry, Wendy, and there was someone else I couldn't unmute.
Alex.
Alex, and you guys, I wasn't unable to unmute you. We have a guest. Is that right, Dr. Turbin? Is he with us? Mike, do you know, is Dr. Turbin on the line here?
I do not see him yet.
All right, Wendy, you were next. I don't know if we can get you unmuted here. And then Alex Williams.
I'm fine with my mute. I unmuted myself. I was offered to, but I didn't want to unmute and have background noise before my turn. But yeah,
Okay,
I was
go
gonna
ahead. We'll go to Alex. We're waiting for Dr. Turbin. Then we're going to go to talk about the guide and Pacifica. So we got 70 people with us. That was really terrific. Thank you again, Mike. Wendy, go ahead, and then Alex Williams. Mike, do you still have your hand up, Mike?
Yeah, I do. I wanted to make a quick reference. If you want to help the Congresswoman get Medicare for All passed in the House of Representatives, work with National Nurses United. And they've also been stalwarts on the single-payer bill in California as the California Nurses Association, as everybody who's been active on these issues knows very well. I'll drop a link into the chat where you can help the nurses. They've got this great campaign called Patients Over Profits. And what they want everybody to do is go up to every elected official, from dog catcher, if they still have elected dog catchers, all the way up to Biden, if you happen to be at a cocktail party with him or something on Martha's Vineyard, like so many of us are. But confront them and demand that they sign a pledge to not accept any money from the big pharmaceutical corporations, from the big insurance companies, from any of their lobbyists, so on and so forth, to get that dirty money out of their pockets, get themselves out of the pockets of the lobbyists, and get everybody on a national or a statewide healthcare plan that will cover absolutely everything that everybody needs in terms of healthcare, as the Congresswoman explained.
All right. Thank you for that, Mike. Very, very good. Very important. Thank you also, Paul Newman, for the California update. As we know, if California would go to single payer, that's 10% of the country, and we are the fifth or sixth largest economy in the world. So there you go. Okay, Wendy, then Alex, then we're waiting for Dr. Turbin.
Thanks. Yeah, I was gonna also give Julian Assange a shout out because he needs us very much right now, and it's important to keep our voices on him. I wanted to let Rep. Jayapal know that when she comes back, it would be really awesome to link her with Jerry Ashton and
Yes,
the RIP
definitely.
medical debt, and also some of the work we're doing in Florida with Carolina Ampudia and Jen Perlman, because I'm in an area that right now is the highest, said it before, the highest population of Cubans outside of Cuba, and they're major Trump supporters, but they're also the largest enrolled population of Obamacare recipients in the country. So it's, you know, it's about that messaging and reaching out. But what I really wanted to talk to her about was having independent third-party audits and making sure that our polls and our voting is counted, and making sure we have protection for poll workers, and just kind of letting her know about what John Brakey and Ray Lutz do and what they did in Arizona, because you know that there's going to be a lot of contention with, you know, people not believing the outcome of the election. And it's really important that we have an independent third-party tool that everybody can agree on, so there's not riots in the streets and reason to have 69 cop cities all over, which I probably wouldn't have gone into that, but I wanted to mention to her the auditing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Alex Williams and Mike, let me know when Dr. Turbin comes on, please. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Jamie Raskin a little
Yes.
while ago. Is he gonna be on or no? Or
He has been, and if Mike
I'm
can
in
work
his
his
district.
magic. Oh, you're in his district. Well, I
I'm
think
in his district, yeah.
You're Mike Hersh's neighbor. Mike, are you in Jamie's district? You're nearby.
I am as well. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not too far off the pike.
Oh, well, there you go. And
I wanted to say this Medicare single payer thing has been a thing with me for the last 10 or some odd years. I didn't even notice it as an issue, like most people don't, until I got charged for the ambulance. That never happened in my life. I was like, I just, what are you talking about? Paid for the ambulance, you know? And and then seeing Sicko, that did it. That just did it. Those two things. Then in talking to people, I found out about how many people just don't know, and seeing relatives getting jacked up, you know, having to go into debt because of medical bills. And so, yeah, I've been passionate about this for a long time. And here's my thing. I was going to ask her that calculator. I think we need to like bombard that all over, because most people don't have no clue how much money they would save. And that gets people. If you tell them how much cheaper it would be and better service they would get, that people already approve it, but then they'll start pushing for it. You know, because that's a problem. The people will be for it, but you know, if you're just going to sit home and watch wrestling or something, and because if people aren't active, it's like a vacuum. If the people aren't active, money will be, and we all know that because that's what
you know. It almost made me cry that we're finally talking about a bread and butter issue here, and off all the distractions that have been thrown at us in this ridiculous election campaign, and to the great detriment of everybody. Ray McClendon, I'm really glad you were able to directly connect with the Congresswoman. I think she got right away who you are and the importance of your work. So that's good. We will discuss in the second hour the guidebook, which is coming along. And we also have Jan Goodman with us from Pacifica. We'll go there shortly. Robert Hanson, you have a hand, and then Myla Reason. Robert, are you muted? Let's get you unmuted. Yes, you're unmuted.
Yeah. Thank you very much. My question about Medicare for all, there's two. One is Medicare right now pays doctors and facilities a lot lower than private insurance. So I think that's going to be an issue. And the second thing is, I think people are still not quite clear how it's paid for, because a Biden administration is accused of spending so much money, like during COVID, that it brought inflation up. And I think there's going to be that argument brought up. How is Medicare paid for? And I was just curious your thoughts on that.
Well, I think we could have population control when it comes to aircraft carriers, nuclear weapons, nuclear power plants, all the stuff that kills people. And if you look at the total, I'm sorry to jump in, but if you look at the total, if it wasn't for Medicare, I wouldn't have had a house. I couldn't have put my kids through college. My parents were very healthy through most of their life. Last year, they ran up about $1 million, which they more than deserved. But if I'd have had to pay for it, we would have been bankrupt.
And
So,
Sluggo, a couple real quick points. Medicare for all, as written up in the legislation that Congresswoman Jayapal has introduced, would actually cost significantly less and save hundreds of billions of dollars every year for the taxpayers, as well as saving lives, at least 40,000 lives a year, according to several estimates. So if you say that Medicare for all costs too much, well, it costs a lot less than what we would have to be doing without it. Because right now, we're not only spending for the doctors, we're also spending for the insurance companies, and we're spending for the doctors to fill out all the forms to get reimbursed from the insurance companies, which cost the doctors a lot more. So whether Medicare for all would pay a little bit less than now, the doctors would have a lot of time off to spend with their patients. They wouldn't be bogged down with a whole lot of red tape. They wouldn't be fighting with insurance companies, telling them, no, that procedure is not what your patient needs. When you have all these insurance companies and their bureaucrats who are practicing medicine without a license, every time they say no, and that's what they're hired to do. So Medicare for all is such a good policy. It's almost hard to convince people how good it is. It's better than you even think.
To really understand Medicare, yeah, go ahead. To really understand Medicare for all, you have to understand what we pay as a whole society for medical care, and then compare that to the cost of Medicare. Go ahead, Nancy, Dr. Nancy.
Everything Mike said just now is right. You've got to remember that 30 to 40%, well, 20 to 40% of every healthcare dollar goes to the insurance company to hire people to tell you to waste your time and make you wait for care and maybe not get it. Well, does Medicare pay less than all the rich insurance companies used to pay? But half of the doctors are not surgeons. They don't do procedures, and they are actually making less than the surgeons. So you have half of the doctors who aren't for Medicare for all. But Medicare pays better than pays doctors, even the non-surgical ones, better than the pediatricians get paid. Doctors are not going to lose. You're right. They're going to have more time to spend with you. But 1/3 of our money is going to the insurance companies simply to screen out your care. Don't worry about doctors being half the doctors making less. That's not going to happen. They're probably going to make more.
Exactly. Thank you, Nancy. And you're a doctor, so you know. MYLA RESON, and then Paul Newman, and then Vinny, and then we're going to probably be at the top of the hour and jump into Pacifica.
Thank you so much, Harvey. I actually want to thank Alex Williams for his statement. And if I understood correctly, Alex, if you wouldn't mind, let me see if we can unmute you. I wanted to know if I think you said that you're in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm wondering whether you've been hearing about all of the controversy around this Medicare Advantage, et cetera, on the Great Pacifica Station in Washington, D.C., WPFW, and I'm wondering if you are a member of that station. I'm hoping you are, and I'm hoping that you'll stick with us when we talk about Pacifica and WPFW, and I'm hoping that if you're not a member, you'll join. But can you, where are you, Alex? I'm looking for, okay, I'm going to spotlight you now so you can respond.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? Did you hear my question?
Yeah, I heard it. I'm not a member. I know the station. Pacifica, they're, and I'm originally from New York, so it was BAI too. But yeah, the Medicare Advantage is not Medicare, and I've heard some people around here talk about it, and most people find out too late. When like most things, it's like selling you like an old used car salesman. As soon as you get it off the lot, then you figure this is wrong, that's wrong. Well, Medicare Advantage is the same thing. It sounds good up front, but then when you really need it, but they sell it. That's why I get suspicious if there's too many TV commercials. Because if you got all that money and it's a hustle, simple as that.
So we need you at WPFW is what MYLA is trying to say. $25 to become a member. I'm not asking for a donation. I'm asking you to become a member, and we can contact you if you'll put your chat thing in the chat. Maybe MYLA can add you to our lists and get you to run for the PFW board.
Oh, okay.
Think of that. Think of
All
that.
right.
You could be a member of the board of WPFW and help us reclaim Pacifica. Thank you, Alex.
Alex, I'm going to send you a direct message, and I hope you'll give me your contact information.
You got my email?
No,
well,
you're
I'm not
in the chat.
I mean, I get it all the time. Well, PDA sends me emails all the time. So.
right, but I'm going to personally send it to you so I can give you some information, and stick around the next hour when we talk about.
Please, yeah, we're about to jump in. Paul Newman and Vinny, and then we're going to go to Jan Goodman and MYLA and do a discussion on Pacifica. Paul, go ahead. You still haven't got your picture of Eleanor up next to Franklin there.
I know, and I'm a member of the ADA, who was founded by Eleanor Roosevelt. So I'll have to find one. But anyway, to get to the original question, which was how will doctors be properly paid? And Wendy and Nancy answered a lot of it. But yeah, I just wanted to say the administrative costs of processing claims is out. Is no longer in there. The money from Medicare, Medicaid, the ACA, and all the local state stuff like Medi-Cal will no longer be there. So that would fund 75% of the trust fund for a Medicare for all system in the United States. The other 25 most likely would be a progressive tax, but if you compare what you pay in premiums, deductibles, office visits, it's like equivalent to one premium payment for the whole year, and could be $300 to $500 more taxes. Or you can do the calculator that Paramila Jayapal says. But basically, that answers the question for the doctors. That's money in their pocket when they don't have to deal with administrative claims. So that's my contribution. I'm muting now.
Well, that's a good one. And, don't be shy about talking about California, because California is 10% of the country, and if we get it in California, the odds of getting it for the rest of the country go way up. Vinny, and then
Sluggo, speaking of doctors, Dr. Turbin is with us.
I know, but we got Dr. Turbin. Can you stick with us through the hour? Because we do have a Pacifica discussion lined up, and if you can be with us,
it would be okay with me. It would be okay to have Dr. Turbin go first, if that.
Oh, all right, okay.
And I don't need to say anything. Go ahead and have Dr. Turbin.
Well, no, go ahead, Benny. All right, okay, Dr. Turbin. All right, so everybody, we have 62 people with us. Dr. Turbin, I'll let Mike Hersh introduce you, and we'll talk with you for a while before we go to Pacifica and the guide. We just had a great discussion. That was so great to talk about a real issue in this country, and in this election. But go ahead, Mike, if you'll introduce Dr. Turbin, that'd be great. And thank you, Jan, for being so gracious.
I became aware of Dr. Turbin reading him correcting people on social media, making very complicated issues regarding gender identity, trans rights, trans children, medical care for trans people. These are very vexing subjects, and a lot of people of goodwill are confused because it's not something that comes up in everybody's everyday life. But for some people, the percentage of people who are trans, whether they're parents of a trans child, whether they're a trans adult, whether they have somebody in their family who is trans, these things can be very, very confusing. But Dr. Turbin is an absolute wonder at making these complicated issues very, very easy to understand. So that's why I was fascinated with him. That's why we invited him to come and speak with us. And that's why I look forward to him speaking with us right now, because he's going to clear up a whole lot of confusion that might still be lingering in our minds and make very complicated things very clear for anybody. So welcome, Doctor.
Doctor, where are you? I'm just curious.
I'm in San Francisco in my office.
Okay, so you are in the, before you get going, you're in the KPFA territory. We want to talk to you about joining the board at KPFA, being part of Pacifica Radio, which is the next big discussion. $25 to become a member, you get the vote. And if you'll give us your contacts, we'll recruit you to become part of the Pacifica situation, okay?
Yeah, happy to talk about it more.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead now, please. We're happy to have the discussion that you came to have on trans and LGBTQ issues. So please go ahead.
Yeah, is there anywhere you wanted to start in particular?
Well, Mike raised the trans issue. This is obviously a point that right-wingers love to jump in on and yell and scream about, especially the providing of trans treatments to minors, which I think is the big hot button issue for the right wing. So why don't you jump in there if you don't mind?
Yeah, maybe I can start by explaining how doctors take care of trans kids at different stages of development. Because I think a lot of the political rhetoric misses that we approach these kids differently depending on how old they are or how far they are in development, right? You'll hear things like doctors are doing genital surgeries on children, which couldn't be further from the truth. So I'll kind of walk you through the different ages and how we take care of kids.
That's perfect. Thank you.
So for young prepubertal children, we don't consider any medical interventions. So when we're taking care of these kids, it's more just through talk therapy. Sometimes they might want to try a new name or pronouns. And so we'll let them do that, see how it feels. And a lot of our work, honestly, is working with families, working with schools, working with communities, because these young kids tend to get bullied really intensely or rejected by their communities. And so for those young kids, it's mostly working with their environments, protecting them. And if they want to explore different non-medical things, we let them do so and see how that goes. The first time we would consider any medical intervention is when a young person reaches what's called Tanner 2 of puberty, or the early stages of puberty. For some trans kids, they enter puberty and they're fine. It doesn't bother them. Other kids enter puberty and they have a really intense negative reaction to their body developing in a way that doesn't feel authentic to who they are. So for those kids, we might do a comprehensive mental health evaluation, collecting a gender history, understanding if they have any other mental health problems, but really getting a full picture of that young person, and then talking to the family, weighing risks and benefits about whether or not a puberty blocker makes sense. So these are medications that will put puberty on pause so the young person can be in therapy and later decide on next steps. The nice thing about these medications is if you stop them, puberty will start again. So in that sense, we consider them reversible. They do have side effects, though. You fall behind on bone density when you're on them, for instance. So it's not a small decision. But we have this very, really pretty strict conservative approach where you have to have a mental health evaluation and really talk about the treatment in depth before starting it. Later in adolescence, you might consider gender-affirming hormones. This is a bigger decision because those change your body in ways that aren't reversible, right? Testosterone will deepen your voice, which you can't undo later. Estrogen will cause some body fat redistribution that can revert a little bit, but can be permanent. So those are bigger decisions that we hold for later in adolescence, and you actually would need to have a second mental health evaluation before being able to start that. Gender-affirming surgeries, like genital surgeries, are really just reserved for adults. You might hear a rare instance where a 17-year-old might have surgery just so they can have it before they go to college, for instance, so they don't have to have a surgical recovery during their freshman year. But even that's very rare, that genital surgery is really for adults. The one surgery you might hear about is chest surgery for trans boys. Obviously a very big decision, again, requires a mental health evaluation, consent from the parents and the kid, and really a clear sense that the risks of surgery, which are substantial with any surgery, are outweighed by the potential mental health benefits of that surgery. So I hope that gives a sense of really what gender-affirming medical care looks like.
Yeah, that's very helpful to me, actually. I have this discussion with my kids, and there are, of course, a lot of misconceptions put out there by the right wing, saying that, you know, I won't characterize what they say. You know well. Are you a medical doctor, Dr. Turbin?
Yes, I'm a psychiatrist.
Okay. And so Vinny, you've got a hand, and then Wendy. What Vinny, you're
There we go. It sounds that there was a connection between the healthcare issue and this issue that the doctor just talked about, because what we have here is people talking about the cost and talking about how can we pay for it and the rest of that stuff, or in this case, the horror that will occur to young children is just flat out dishonest. It is wrong. They're using tropes that are just not true. And it's the same thing with the healthcare. And so it's funny, it's serendipitous that the two of these come together, because it is an ideological issue and not really an issue about the health of the child or the well-being, the mental well-being of an individual. Thank you.
Yes, very important. Good point, Vinny. Wendy, I'm still there. You go. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Turbin. Thank you for joining us. And Jack was my dad's name, so I already like you. So I think I would be remiss for myself if I didn't say something about this other issue, which actually keeps coming up in this call. And so you're new, so you know, I welcome having you, and really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I think it's important, especially for the women's movement, to, you know, be a part of, because we face the same oppressors. You know, there's a statistic that there were 500,000 reported rapes of women in a year and a half since Dobbs, and the FBI estimates it's 3 times more than that. And I know for trans and just homosexual, like, it's a huge thing that we face in society, and anyone who's not in our shoes doesn't really understand that. My one issue that I think is a woman's issue is the idea with sports. And I think a lot of men aren't understanding and I have 2 angles on this. And one is, okay, I have a young, she's now a woman, she just got into grad school, but when she was in high school, I mentor her. And when she was in high school, she was a champion, state champion swimmer. And I could only imagine, and I know, like, and her whole identity at the time, I don't want to, you know, say her, but very much a lot of her identity was kind of wrapped up in the competition and how well she did in the outcome, you know, instead of the, you know, the enjoyment. And so I can only imagine how shattered she would be as if she'd lost an important match to someone that was born with more muscle mass, or, and leading to my other point of this, that I think men are not you're a doctor, but a lot of men are not going to consider the fact that like right now, I feel like I got hit by a dump truck because I'm menstruating. And when, you know, when women spend a lot of time together, and any of the women can confirm this, when women spend time together, they all menstruate, their cycles they link up and align. And so if you have an entire team and you're competing against people that don't have, you know, this handicap to deal with, and a lot of girls have disorders that are related to their menstrual cycle, like endometriosis and cysts. And for me, like, I couldn't get out of bed last night for hours and hours. So it's just a really unfair advantage. And, or if someone gets hurt, you know, because there's someone that is just built a little bit larger, which there's nothing wrong with. I don't mind sharing a bathroom or a locker room, you know, like, we need to come together, but just understanding that it's like, when, you know, someone's rights end where the next person's rights begin, in a sense. So I again, thank you for being here and all the work that you're doing. Thanks.
Yeah, I can talk about that a bit. So I'm on the NCAA's committee for competitive safeguards and medical aspects of sports. So just what I'm saying now, though, is my opinion, not their opinion. It's my disclosure. So that's something I thought about a lot. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there that's driving it, right? I think there's this idea out there that if trans women compete in sports, that cisgender women are not going to win anymore, or that trans women are going to dominate sports leagues. And most of that is based on comparing cisgender men to cisgender women, right? And seeing that cisgender men perform better in a lot of sports than cisgender women. But the thing that I think is really important to remember is that transgender women are not cisgender men, right? And they're actually underrepresented in sports titles. So if we thought that trans women had this huge advantage, you would expect them to be dominating sports leagues. But the reality is they're not, right? Other than, say, Leah Thomas, that's the one example that everyone says. It seems that there are fewer trans people winning sports titles than there are trans people. We've yet to have a trans woman medal in the Olympics, for instance. And it raises the question of why is that, right? We think this testosterone advantage gives this huge advantage for trans women, so they should be winning all the time. My suspicion is that the deck is stacked against them in almost every other way that makes it really hard to compete and train and win, right? More stigma, more harassment, more bullying, higher rates of mental health struggles, all of those things make it more difficult to compete and win. And I also think it's a disingenuous political discussion, to be honest. I'm going to talk a little bit long, I apologize. But you know, this is an old political strategy that goes all the way back to the 90s. So do you all remember the Colorado amendment that would have made it illegal to pass anti-discrimination laws for gay people?
No, but go ahead.
So what was happening was in Colorado, individual cities were passing anti-discrimination laws to protect LGBT people. There was a small conservative organization that didn't like that. So they tried to amend the Colorado Constitution to make it illegal for a city to pass an anti-discrimination law. They had two strategies. Their first strategy was to call gay people groomers and dangerous. That might sound familiar, right? That one's very much back. The second one was that they knew that civil rights leaders, to your point, really hit a wall with affirmative action, because that is when white people started feeling that, okay, we support civil rights, but now that you're taking something away from me, I don't like it anymore. Like you were saying, someone's right starts when someone else ends. And so ultimately they came up with a slogan that was equal rights, not special rights. It didn't matter that, you know, anti-discrimination laws don't give you special rights. It still capitalized on that feeling that something's being taken from me. So they were ultimately successful. The Colorado Constitution was amended, and then it wasn't until the Supreme Court later overturned that. So I think we're seeing the same thing in sports, right? We have this rumor rhetoric that's back to attack LGBT people. And now the trans sports thing is this idea that trans people are taking something away from cisgender people. But if you look at the politicians who are introducing these laws to restrict sports participation, the Associated Press went out and asked them, can you name a single trans athlete in your state? None of them could, right? So this isn't legislation that's coming from a place of a real problem that we're seeing a lot of trans athletes take sports titles away. That hasn't actually been happening. But it's really, I think, something that's politically driven.
Yeah, if I could, and I apologize, I don't mean to take it, but I really do need to respond to that, because and I again like totally respect, and I know your job and what you're up against is difficult. Again, we have the same oppressors, right? These opinions are based on my own feelings that I've had, as because I'm in Florida, I'm in South Florida. I'm actually, my high school was right next to Wilton Manors, which is like for a long time was the highest like gay population outside of San Francisco. Like, so, you know, my brothers and sisters, like I'm in solidarity with you, but these are my genuine concerns on the same rate of the mental health of these individual cases of the girls. Like, again, like I know someone who plays competitive sports that I would be the first one, like without any, like I don't own a TV. I don't care what the other side is saying, but if she lost a match or if she got hurt, or even if she lost in practice and she came home crying because she felt like she was playing against someone who had an unfair disadvantage, who doesn't menstruate and deal with the pain, the physical pain that these girls endure on a monthly basis for decades of their life. This is a physical pain that men are not going to understand. And so this is an unfair advantage. And if she came home crying, I'd be the first one out there protesting. And I think that that's where it comes in. I'm not trying to keep anybody out.
I would say I'm surprised that you can't recognize the pain and difficulties that transgender people go through that also make it difficult.
I'm not saying that I don't. I'm saying like I'm saying that I do respect that and appreciate it. But when you have girls that are just minding their own business and they're trying to develop their own sense of self-worth and self-esteem. And now, you know, there's someone that's saying, well, I need to have my rights and I need to feel good. So I'm going to not care about how you're feeling. Then that's where I feel like there's a conflict within movements that should be working together. And we need to have the respect to understand where and acknowledge and validate everybody's feelings, because again, we have the same oppressor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Mike Hersh, and then I think we're gonna wander into the land of Pacifica. Jack, this is really good. Thank you, Dr. Jack Turbin. Mike Hersh, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to thank Wendy for raising these concerns, and I understand how she feels about this. Nobody likes the idea of losing unfairly or having somebody they care about losing unfairly. But I think what I hear the doctor saying is this is not really a problem in reality. We can all imagine that it might be, but it isn't. And in fact, what ends up happening is the opposite of what you think would happen. Because if you think about it this way, okay, we don't want trans women in sports. What are we going to do about it? Okay, we're going to ban all trans women. Then it turns out that some women have rare genetic chromosomal configurations, and then they get kicked out of sports too. And then there are women, usually women of color, who get accused of being trans by somebody else's father or uncle or something, who starts screaming at them. These are cis girls who are traumatized by people who imagine that they're trans. Then you get the moral panic all going, and you have all kinds of different things happening. That's the nightmare scenario. That's what all moral panics depend on. They depend on people having legitimate feelings and legitimate concerns and getting whipped up into hysteria. And here's an example that actually did happen. A little trans girl decided that she wanted to start a field hockey team in her high school, and there was none. And she got together with some of her cis girlfriends, and they all put together a little field hockey team. Then this got banned on the state level, and they kicked her off of her own field hockey team that she started. And the team just kind of dissolved because of her, her being kicked off. So what ended up happening was a bunch of cis girls lost the chance to play field hockey. Right. We can't deal with imagination. We can't deal with nightmare scenarios that we've dreamt up or are afraid of, even legitimate fears. We have to deal with what really happens. And what really happens is trans women and girls underperform for a number of reasons. We're not even sure what all the reasons are, but we know that there hasn't been a single medal won in the Olympics by a trans woman. There hasn't been. There hasn't been a whole bunch of trans women dominating the WNBA or the NCAA or anything else, because they have a whole lot of disadvantages. Now, they're not necessarily the exact same disadvantages that some women have. And Wendy's absolutely right. Cis women and trans women and cis girls are different. There are differences, but those differences do not translate into athletic advantage. They just don't.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. I will say one thing. You hit on a thing that's extremely important, which is the concept that people have that something is being taken away from them. And that is the entire basis of the Trump dictatorship movement. There's a whole constituency in this country, obviously tens of millions of people, who think that things are being taken away from them by migrants, by people of color, by trans people. And they look at the demographics of Trump supporters, and overwhelmingly they're from counties where the racial makeup has changed, and where the white people, the white majority, believe that they have been robbed of something, and so that's you know, I've seen all the touch points on now, many of the touch points on the transgender issue. It's always about, you know, the right to a bathroom or the right to competitive sports or money being paid by the government for trans surgeries. It's always something that's being taken away from other people. So let's deal with that. It's extremely complicated. Dr. Turbin, you've done a great job. We look forward to having you on the KPFA board. And if you will just wrap up for us, we're going to start to talk about Pacifica. And Wendy, thank you so much for your sharing on this as well. Go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me. I'll just say I have a new book out called Free to Be, Understanding Kids and Gender Identity. It's backwards on the Zoom.
No, it's good.
But in here, it goes into a lot more depth about all the things we just talked about. So what gender affirming care is, what it's like for young people to go through it. And it both tells the stories of young people and shares a lot of the research and data. And another story that's in there that people might find interesting to read is the story of Andrea Yearwood. She was one of those trans girls competing in Connecticut that a lot of people were saying, you know, because these trans girls are competing in track, cisgender girls can't win. There was a lawsuit from the Alliance Defending Freedom where they sued the Connecticut Association of Schools. It was dismissed a few days later because the cisgender girls beat the transgender girls at the state championship. So many more stories and more nuance to talk about on all of these topics. And I really hope people will engage in the book. Again, Free to Be, Understanding Kids and Gender Identity. And I'd love to be in more conversation about it.
Well, we'll have you back. It's really, really interesting. It's amazing what nature throws at us. I just watched, by the way, I have to mention this, the Netflix documentary on Caitlyn Jenner. And I think it's so amazing that it proves that the universe has a sense of humor. You have the greatest athlete in the world who set all the records in the decathlon, which is the hardest event there is in sports. And they have the whole first half of the documentary deals with Bruce Jenner as being the world's most famous and powerful athlete. And he sees himself as a woman. I thought, what an incredible lesson to teach the human race about diversity and tolerance. So I strongly recommend people look at this thing. I think it's called Caitlyn, but it's on Netflix, and it's about this astounding transformation that this person went through. And what's the most amazing to me is that Caitlyn Jenner is now a Republican, for God's sakes. How do you do that? But anyway, okay, thank you so much, Dr. Turbin. We really appreciate it. We'll look at your book. I hold it up again one more time. It's actually not backwards, by the way.
Oh, great.
There you go. Free to Be. Okay, that looks like a really important book. We will have you back, and we welcome you to the Pacifica board, and at least join, become a voting member. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to jump in with Dr. Jack before we move on? Okay. Take care. And Mike, thank you for bringing Dr. Jack with us. We greatly appreciate it. Still have 56 people with us. I think this is the only call in the world that more people come on as we go on. We've now got the great Jan Goodman in Los Angeles. On my screen, she's next to Vinny DiStefano, who will soon be on the KPFA board in Los Angeles. We look forward to that. Go ahead, please. Jan Goodman, give us an update. Tell us how. I expect, by the way, 55 people is more than enough to have a major impact if you're all voting in the upcoming Pacifica election. We need people to join before June 30th so that you'll be eligible to vote in the upcoming election. It's $25. Jan is going to tell you how to do it and then tell us what the significance of the Pacifica situation really is. Jan's been at it for decades and is just incredibly hard worker on this issue. And we do have TATANKA BRICCA with us, who's the chair of the KPFK board, who actually this past yesterday, conducted almost to the end, we almost got through it, the most civilized KPFK board meeting that I have ever attended. So, and I was chair for a while. So anyway, go ahead, Jan, and then TATANKA, and let's talk about, we got Dave Saltman with us too, by the way, who has volunteered for a very large sum of money to be our advisor. So go ahead, Jan Goodman.
So I just put into the chat so that everyone could have it handy. Um, some information about how to become a member of Pacifica. And essentially, to become a member of Pacifica, all you need to do is to donate $25 to your most local Pacifica outlet. But let me tell you a little bit about why you should do that.
And we want to say it's not a donation, it's a membership fee. We're not really supposed to be asking for donations, but we do want people to sign up, become members, to have a voice. And by the way, we have a Michael Moore on the phone on the call. Michael, if you're making a film about this, let us know, please. Okay, go ahead.
So what I'm really here to talk about is saving independent media. Pacifica is one of the very few media outlets in the country that is truly independent, that has no corporate sponsorship. And although we're starting to try to get a little bit of corporate donations, but the principle of Pacifica is that it is sponsored by the people who support it and by becoming members of Pacifica. And when I say independent media, I can't understate the importance of independent media, and I could go through many examples of why it's important and how it's important, but I'll just give you one example. Venezuela, as most of you know, is a very small country, mostly Black and indigenous, and for 250 years it was only run by white men. And then finally, in 2002, a non-white man, Hugo Chavez, was elected as president. And Chavez committed terrible sins while in office. He spent vast amounts of the profits from the sale of oil on the people in the country. And he reduced the poverty rate from 50% to 25% in 10 years. How dare he do that? And the entire corporate media, along with corporate America, chastised him and bullied him and so forth for taking away their oil. There were very few, almost no media outlets that supported Hugo Chavez and talked about what was going on in the country and the changes. And however, Pacifica did. You could hear Greg Palast, Margaret Prescott, and others across the network talk about him. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about when we're talking about independent media. And I could go through many more examples of that, but I won't. The bottom line is, however, that Pacifica has 5 stations, just to review this. Probably most of you know this, but just for those who may not know it, Pacifica has 5 stations: New York, WBAI, Washington, D.C., WPFW, Houston, Texas, KPFT, Berkeley, San Francisco, KPFA, and Southern California, Los Angeles, KPFK. And each of those stations is part of the Pacifica network, and we also have about 250 affiliates who download our programs and upload their programs and share programs. So Pacifica has gone through bad times and good times. We were major players sometimes, and then sometimes, like now, we're in a financial struggle. And that is the reason. And there is big changes are underway. And in order to get those changes accomplished, we need members in order to move Pacifica forward. We need people to actually become members of the local station board and the national board. And just to start with, a $25 donation.
No, a membership fee.
Oh, I'm sorry. A $25 membership fee will be an incredible start. If you could please become a member of Pacifica and then listen to it. But whether you listen to it or not, and you can listen to all of these programs, you can, at the same place you can go to donate, you can also go to, for instance, kpfk.org and listen live. And you can also listen to the podcasts. Among those podcasts and among the live programs, Harvey Wasserman, who you might know, and MYLA Reason, one of his sidekicks, have a program called California Solartopia, which is live on Wednesdays, but which you can pick up their podcasts any day of the week by going to kpfk.org. So this is a very serious request to become part of saving Pacifica. And part of that, one of the things that they report on is electoral politics, election protection, and related items. So this is where your heart is. So put your money where your mouth is, where your heart is, become a member of Pacifica. And I will stop there so that people can ask me questions.
Right. So what we have now upcoming is an election where the members of the local station boards will be seated. And our station board meetings have a reputation for being, shall we say, raucous. And they are, except since TATANKA has taken over at KPFK. And but we do, find our way through it. And KPFK and the other Pacifica stations put stuff on the air that no one else will touch. So it's absolutely essential. And we need not just your money as your membership fee, but your presence. We know that Vinny and Nancy NIPARKO are going to be running for the station board at KPFK, and others in the other station. Well, Mike, we hope will join the PFW board in DC. So this is part of the package. TATANKA BRICCA, go ahead, please, Mr.
Yeah. When I was asked and suggested by friends to run for the board, like most of you on this call, I'm beyond busy, right? Really didn't feel like I had time. The underlying reason why I did it is I cannot imagine my life without Pacifica Radio. For me, it was some kind of KPFK, but I mainly grew up in Northern California, so it's KPFA. And everything that Jan and Harvey have been talking about is so true. You heard stories and you got information from there that you can never get from any other station. I'm including NPR and other stations that were highly capitalized by corporate dollars. You heard ex-CIA agents and their books. You heard the things where you could connect the dots on how the world works. And I'm talking about from the days of the free speech movement, 1964 in Berkeley, civil rights movement, women's movement, environmental movement, indigenous movement, amazing music. I mean, just such a blessing for our life. The archives of Pacifica Radio are an invaluable history, our real history of the United States, taken from the perspective of the people. So to continue that tradition, and you have no idea how many people got their start there and then became players, that you have no idea what this did for their lives. So that's why I'm showing up, and I'm encouraging everyone to really consider a $25 membership fee so you can vote minimally. and also to consider serving on the board, because like in all movement work, you know, other people who aren't part of a movement don't understand. They admire our courage and they admire all our commitment. They don't see that the most valuable thing is you meet the most amazing people in the world who have your back, and we have their back. And there's nothing like having people that are part of a real human family and acting on that, not just knowing it, but acting on it in real life. So that's my pitch to you. Just think about what you can give, and then what you get instantly from the community that is the KPFK, especially the board, because we work together intimately on some really powerful issues. Thanks.
So let me make a little comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've sort of been talking a little bit, it may sound to some people like we've been talking about past tense, but let me just bring it up to date. If you want to hear about what's happening with Julian Assange, Pacifica is one of the few places that you can actually hear about it on a regular basis. And Vinny's putting up his hand, and that's his life right now. Because if you care about Julian Assange and you want to find out what's happening in the media, Pacifica is one of the few places you're going to hear about it. Likewise, if you want to hear about what's actually happening in Gaza, if you want to hear about what's actually happening in the West Bank, you would be hard pressed to hear very much about it almost anywhere else except Pacifica. Pacifica, you're going to hear Democracy Now!, Amy Goodman, I might add Amy, no relation Goodman, every morning reporting on what's going on in Israel and Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza. So this is not about the past tense. This is about the present tense, and it's about the future. And we need your membership and we need your votes, because there's an election coming up. We need your votes, and hopefully seriously consider becoming a member of the board. You don't have to be a longtime listener to become a member of the board, but if you care about independent media, if you care about being able to hear these things, and yes, lots of people only listen to podcasts, but lots of people still listen to the radio, and you can hear all kinds of things on the radio, and Pacifica does podcasts, but there is a struggle within Pacifica as to what direction it's going to go, and there are people who are almost the equivalent of MAGA people in their direction, but we need honest, concerned, organizationally minded people that want to save this network to also vote and run and be a part of the Pacifica community. So thank you. And you can call on the next person, Harvey.
Well, it's also a place where you can make a difference. I mean, the boards are small enough that just the presence of one additional sane human being, I mean, we are subject to all sorts of serious pressures. I won't go into detail, but one voice of sanity on any of these station boards really makes a difference. You really do feel, it's a lot of these meetings are a nightmare, but
caused by only a few people.
Yes, and so the more sane people we have, the more ability we have, which has grown of late, to survive the miasma. Steve Caruso, and then MYLA. Steve?
Yeah. I posted in the chat, Brad Friedman is on the air now. He's been a stalwart for election protection and understanding how things are working in the background, talking about all the issues with elections. I mean, do you get coverage from anybody in the country that does work like that? I don't see it. And a lot of people that know Pacifica, that supports Pacifica, know about Brad, understand his work, and respect it. And that is so important to everybody.
Absolutely. Amy Goodman, and also the great Tom Hartman. These are voices that really should be dominating the media, but Pacifica is the only media that will carry them. Thank you, Steve. MYLA Reason, my co-host on California Solartopia.
Well, first, I'd like to say that I know that Steve was trying to show that for those of you who are watching and not listening on the radio, you can go to kpfk.org and find audio archives of our California Solartopia show. A lot of people make the mistake of looking in alphabetical order for Solartopia, and they miss the show name, which is California Solartopia. But I want to underscore the importance of joining your Pacific, becoming a member of your the closest Pacifica station to you before June 30th, because we are engaged in an exercise in media democracy, and people who are members of our KPF, of our local station, people who are members of our radio stations have an opportunity to vote for the local station board and to run for the local station board. So for those of you who are just listening, you can go to newdaypacifica.org and find links to all 5 of the Pacifica stations, KPFA in the San Francisco Bay Area, KPFK in Los Angeles, KPFT in Houston, WPFW in Washington, D.C., and WBAI in New York. If you go to newdaypacifica.org, you can find links to get hooked up and become members to any of the 5 Pacifica stations that are closest to you.
Right.
I also put it in the chat.
Okay, so anybody else want to jump in on this? Like I say, I know Vinny and Nancy, we look forward to having you on the KPFK board. And anybody else that wants to run, they're smiling. But, you know, there is a stigma on these boards that a lot of the meetings are really, really hard to navigate, but they're getting better because we're getting different people with different agendas on the board. I will tell you a story. Since I'm the grandpa here with all the anti-war stories. In 1968, I found myself involved with the Liberation News Service. And we were the pioneer, or a pioneer in alternative media. In the late 60s, 67, 68 primarily, there were a lot of underground papers that popped up around the country. And Pacifica was going at the time. Pacifica, BAI, they were very instrumental mouthpieces of the radical new left, without which those stations we were nowhere. And I was involved in LNS. This is before the internet. I know some of you don't believe there was life before the internet, but and what we did was we took articles, or we wrote articles, and we typed them out literally on Mimeo paper, and then ran them through a Mimeo machine. And then we mailed them out. We mailed out 400 subscribers. And they would then, some of them were radio stations, Pacifica precursors, and they would put the stuff on the air, and others were, I wrote articles that were, wound up in the San Francisco Oracle and the Berkeley Barb and the Columbus Free Press, for God's sakes. The first cover of the Columbus Free Press had a drawing of John Mitchell, who was the Attorney General of the United States, this extreme fascist nutcase, smoking a joint. I thought it was the funniest cover I ever saw in my life. There you go. And the Columbus Free Press actually is still going, as Steve Caruso knows, after all these years. So anyway, we started having these horrible meetings. There were people, we moved from Washington, D.C. to New York City, and Dave Saltman was involved with Liberation News Service, although he looks much too young. And so we started having terrible meetings, and the guy who was the real founder, Marshall Bloom, who I actually knew in high school, was gay, or purported to be. We actually never met anybody that actually could substantiate that he was in fact gay, but he was gay baited by people on the left. It was horrifying. And They tried to purge him, and we instead purged them. As it turns out, we had our little group, which was Marshall was our guy, had incorporated the news service. And when it became obvious that, and this is in a documentary film, by the way, called Far Out. And if anybody wants to see it, email me, and I will send you the link to the documentary film. It's really cool. We call it the Naked Hippie Movie, and I'll tell you why. Because J. Edgar Hoover, as it turned out, personally signed off on destroying our news service. There were FBI, there's all this conspiracy theory. The problem with conspiracy theory is that too often it turns out to be true. And there was a conspiracy. We did have FBI agents at the news service. And long story short, we actually wound up heisting the news service on August 11th, 1968. We went in there. It was perfectly legal. We went in on a Sunday morning, cleaned out the office, and took everything up to a farm in Western Massachusetts. I couldn't make that up. I mean, really. And
I feel compelled to say, Harvey, that for those young people who don't know, J. Edgar Hoover was the head of the FBI.
Right. And a proud gay guy himself. No, not confirmed. But anyway, but that was the underground press. That was the precursor in many ways, although Pacifica was founded in 1947. But by
1949.
49.
Yeah.
And by then, it was everywhere. And Pacifica was a big part of it. And we wound up on a farm in Massachusetts. We helped boost along the organic farming movement. We gave birth to the No Nukes movement. And it was a tremendous part of my life. But we were definitely infiltrated by the FBI. And so sometimes when I'm in Pacifica board meetings, I have deja vu to those horrible LNS meetings back in 1968. But we got through that, and we will get through this with your help. So we need you, like Dave Saltman here, who's going to run for the BAI board. We need your help, and we certainly need to become a member. Salty, did you want to say something here?
Yeah, but I better deny publicly that I'm. Well, let me ask you a serious question since you brought it up, you fool. My understanding is, I ran for the BAI board last year.
Right.
And
like Trump, your election was stolen.
it was so
Okay.
stolen. I think I came in second to last or something like that. But anyway, no, I actually almost made it. But I understood from what I was being told, and I have no idea if any of this was true, that the local station boards were about to be, converted into something else. They would have no clout, no power over the local stations. They would become community advisory boards. Now, number one, is that true? And number two, what does that mean? And number three, why would anyone want to be on a community advisory board? What, I'm supposed to advise Williamsburg how to do something? Forget about it.
Go ahead, Jan Goodman, you want to talk about that?
Yes. Okay. So there was a group of members, including me, proposed a set of bylaws which would actually continue having local station boards, but which would change the focus of the local station boards from being involved in personnel matters and programming matters to refocus them on fundraising and outreach. And that bylaws amendment procedure actually won about 55% of the membership, which was more than 6,000 votes. However, it was challenged in court by those who wanted everything and always want everything to stay the same or go backwards. And so we've been in litigation about that for quite a while. Saying that the station boards were eliminated was one of the things that the Wrecking Ball group accused the New Day bylaws of doing. So not quite true.
Okay, so
but at any rate, we're in litigation about that, which is not going anywhere very fast. So we'll put that aside. But the local advisory board or a local state, the local advisory board would be advising and there are already local advisory boards on at all of the stations, and they're supposed to be advising the station management about outreach and what they could do better and that kind of thing, which in reality would actually be a good service if people took that job seriously, to say, oh, you should be covering, you should consider covering, what's happening in the Armenian community in Glendale or in whatever, you should consider covering the Assange movement in more detail or whatever. So that might be that. But have I answered your question?
Well, basically,
I need to jump in. Excuse me.
Okay, but wait, we're a little deep.
The local advisory boards are required by the FCC for our nonprofit license, as far as I know. That's the reason that we have to have them.
So, David, in your question, anybody who comes on the local board is going to have a say in how Pacifica is run. Exactly how is going to be up for grabs in the coming year. And that's why we need good, smart people like yourself. And
But
I can't.
Doesn't that all depend on the outcome of the litigation?
Okay, let me address
Very quickly.
Okay, I'll try to do this quickly. Let me address it quickly.
And then I have more questions.
First of all, the local station boards are what the upcoming elections are about. Right. And the members of the local station boards elect the members to the national board, the Pacifica National Board, and they actually make real decisions. So, and then they delegate some of those decisions back to the local station board. So becoming a member is actually becoming, at this point, is actually becoming part of governance. That is our present status right now.
Okay.
Not dependent on litigation.
I told you you'd regret mentioning that. But anyway, here's my question for you all, the new wave at Pacifica. You mentioned the two areas of importance, fundraising and programming. Right. What are your ideas, specific ideas, vis-a-vis new ways to raise money and new ways, or maybe bringing back old ways of programming? Let's hear some ideas.
Those are the two core questions that the boards are going to have to really.
No, I'm asking the questions. You need to give the answers.
Okay, I think it's a great topic. I don't think we have time to do it right now. Should we do it at a special GREEP meeting or have?
Well, this is a special GREEP meeting, actually. And David, neither of us has easy answers. Those are questions we're grappling with all the time, which is why we need you on the board. So, this is the key.
Let me give you a couple of ideas.
Great.
I was involved in a fundraising effort for public television, which basically has the same kind of structure as public radio, vis-a-vis 501c3 status and that kind of thing. We raised millions of dollars tax-free by promoting, and this is what the nation does, by promoting cruises, river cruises. Cruise the Danube in Europe with the people from your local PBS Pacifica station. And so a bunch of your pals from Houston will get on a boat in France and cruise the Danube and eat and drink and be merry and basically have their proper family vacation. And the price is very reasonable because it's the same price you'd pay Carnival Cruises, who, by the way, is actually doing this cruise, because who else does them? But it's now a celebrity cruise. It's the Pacifica cruise, and it's starring, and Harvey Wasserman is there, the host, the master of ceremonies, having a ball, taking the trip he always wished he could take anyway. But the brilliant part of it is, it's all tax deductible to the people who are on the cruise, because the money, because the profits are divided with the stations.
All right, that's an idea.
He raised we saw some years we had 16 or 18 boats going, and every one of those boats made $1 million profit.
Wow. Well, a lot of them, of course, were selling pot from city to city,
well,
which enhanced the profits.
You could
That's a great idea, David.
It's a great
Paul
idea.
Newman, Paul Newman.
I just have a quick one. Well, I just want to first make this quick comment, and that is I joined New Day Rising, and for the reason that I attended the earlier board meeting before New Day was put together, and I saw there was a lot of chaos, finger pointing, people accusing people of being racist, because there were stations that were not bringing in donations. You know, I'm just going to use this word, crystal worshipers. There were people who had Hispanic stations that no one was supporting. There were Hispanic stations that are already commercial out there, but the big important money makers are the ones that need to be in there. And I forgot his name, the one who, who resigned, and he had a great show.
Ian Masters.
Yeah, Ian Masters. You know, people like him that brought in donations. I'm just saying, this is why I joined New Day, you know, and support them.
And Mike Hersh is,
because a radio organization needs to have people who know how to run a radio station, which may become with an advisory board.
Correct.
You know, every other radio station has experts on running a radio station.
That's the point.
And that is the point.
Correct.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
David?
Well, we have 40 people on this call. I'm sure at least 35 of them know how to run a radio station. So we need to get everybody in this and get everybody on board.
Excuse me, but Stephen Starr actually knows how to run a radio station. He ran KPFK Los Angeles for a while when we made a transition to democratically elected station boards. And Stephen Starr now has a magnificent show called XR Now that can be heard on Thursdays from 4 to 5 on KPFK. And I think, Stephen, you have a special announcement about a spectacular 3-hour special that you're planning for next Wednesday. Did I say Thursday? I meant Wednesday. I'm so sorry. It's Thursday, XR Now, from 4 to 5 on KPFK Los Angeles.
Go for it, Stephen.
Thanks, MYLA, and thanks, Harvey, and everyone else on this call that I know.
Yeah, so tell us about this spectacular coming up a week from Wednesday.
Yeah, well, you know, it's Extinction Rebellion Radio, and Extinction Rebellion aligned with Theater of War Productions, which is a very radical theater troupe, is taking the great Ibsen play, Enemy of the People, which they interrupted to global coverage about 6 weeks ago. And they're staging it live in Times Square. And they will be joined by Bill Murray and Catherine Urbe and a whole bunch of other incredible actors, activists, lawyers, etc. It's really a remarkable thing. Times Square is being shut down for this. You'll see a bit of a holy noise, and we are fortunate to be taking the entire event and bringing it onto the airwaves of KPFK for a fundraiser next Wednesday. Harvey and MYLA and others have given up their time. We'll have a 3-hour run next Wednesday, the 19th, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., and we will have the opportunity to do some unusual programming for KPFK which I think will be useful for the station and more, and very excited to put that forward, and thanks for the opportunity to share it.
And Stephen, you're going to be preempting California Solartopia, and you'll be on this Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, kpfk.org, for our California Solartopia slot. We will have you on, and then that'll be with your Enemy of the People show the following week from Manhattan. This is the kind of stuff we need to do at Pacifica. We got down to 4:05 already. Geez, Tatanka and then Vinny.
And Jan.
And Jan. Tatanka, Vinny, and Jan. And
Yeah.
we're still with 40 people. Anybody want to pipe up, please? And I'm still, I guess Michael Moore is still with us. If you're filming, Michael, let us know, please.
So, Stephen, thank you. That's the kind of things that we need. We have such an untapped potential. I mean, I'm just talking about LA. We all know. I mean, we all know it's untapped. And this is a really good example. Thank you. I want to say, David, when you get on the board, I have some friends that I'm with now, one of whom I've known quite a while, with two other partners. And 2 out of the 3 have been in the travel business. They're young. They're in their 40s, but they've been in the travel business their whole lives. Well, one's in their 50s. And we can get the lowest rates by far. We can get the lowest rates by far. You can check. We've got a portal now, and all cruises, any hotel, anything that charges money anywhere on the planet, we can get you the lowest prices. So that would mean if you do a cruise and you organize one, and if we do a cruise and we organize one, we've got more money to raise for the station.
Hey, and Nancy NIPARKO points out that the last police chief in Los Angeles named Michael Moore. Michael, if that's you, police chief as opposed to filmmaker, please let us know. And thank you for that, Tatanka. I think we'll rename the station Such a Deal Radio Station. That'll be a good one. Okay, Julian Assange here as
No, we couldn't do that, Harvey. That the acronym is SAD. Can't do that.
Okay. Sad. Michael, Vinny, you're channeling Julian Assange here, please.
Yeah, history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. And if we think about the 2 segments that we had prior, where lies were used to undo facts, we have the same thing with Pacifica. We have people that are trying to protect their own turf with programs that have viewership of about 8 people, if they're lucky. And that somehow, if you have a professional who knows how to run a radio station, somehow you're going to turn yourself into NPR. Well, we don't need another NPR. Screw NPR. Excuse my language, everybody. What we need is Pacifica as it's always been. And the infighting has to stop. And Ian Masters was driven from the air. I listened to his show all the time, and I agreed with very little of what he had to say, but he was an incredible broadcaster. And I thought it was important to have his point of view on there so we could question our own assumptions. And the idea is just having the same thing where you're singing to the choir is pointless. And I think it is a very, very difficult battle to fight. But I think the more people that are on the board, the more people that are reasonable, the more people that understand the importance of the station, the better it's going to be for all of us.
Much agreed. Wendy, and then Stephen, and we're going to be almost out of time here.
Jan.
I can't.
Jan is next.
Oh, Jan was next. Go ahead, Jan, please.
Thank you. So I just wanted to urge people to tune in either in real time or via podcast, because both are available by going to kpfk.org, and then you can look at you just click on the program grid to tune into Solartopia or to Stephen Starr's program XR Now, Extinction Rebellion Radio, and or especially the Enemy of the People program, which will be next Wednesday. And when as you're listening,
it'll be the following Wednesday, Jan.
Okay, I meant next Wednesday, as we've been discussing. send in $25, click on, it says donate, but for some reason, nowhere does it say, and I'll try to remedy that. Nowhere does it say that when you, quote, donate $25, that is paying your dues to become a member. And I'm hoping, Stephen, that, and I'm asking you, since you have your hand up and hopefully will be next, since it was up next, that you at least pitch for people to become members before and after the enemy of the people, so that we can capture all of those people. And if you have any anything to promote the enemy of the people program, can you send it to both GREEP, the GREEP engineer, and or me, so that we can get that information out there and try to get people to listen to it, because I think it's going to be an important program.
Great. Absolutely.
If I could just respond directly to that, Jen, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
We will have promotable assets by the end of the week, which will get to you and yours and to Harvey and whomever is appropriate. And yes, we will pitch very hard for membership during the show. That is the opportunity. And thank you for bringing that up. And I do want to add one more thing in the interest of the historical moment. You know, there's a man who Martin Luther King called the leading theorist and strategist of nonviolence. And he just passed in the last couple of hours, James Lawson. And I had the honor of knowing him and getting to know him over the years. And I just think we're all blessed by his presence in our town. It's made a huge difference to those of us who care about direct action and nonviolence as part of movement building. And I just want to honor with him acknowledging his passing. That's all.
Well, thank you, Did. Thank you much, TATANKA mentioned. We do want to mention Leonard Peltier. Today is his parole board meeting. For God's sakes, it could be the last chance. And, you know, right there, parole board, we posted websites, if someone can post it again. But this is the final moment, I think, to get him out of there. Parole board, parole is probably easier than a pardon. So let's do our best to get that done. And the same with Julian Assange. Let's get him home. Wendy, and then we're almost done here. It's 4:12. Wendy Lederman, go ahead.
Thanks. I have two things. One, quickly, I'm finding it, I'll put it in the chat in a second, but I created some lists of funding resources for journalism, nonprofits, startups. It includes a lot of services that connect luxury, like fancy folks donors with their in-kind donations, like the riverboat cruises and spa packages and all that sort of thing, to use for auction and raffle for nonprofits to raise money with. So I'll send that to you. I'll try to put it in the chat and I'll send it to you. I do want to say, somebody wrote in the chat about the cruises. I completely agree that cruises are terrible for the environment, maybe not the small riverboat ones, but the big cruises. So I have to say that as a disclaimer. The one other thing I wanted to bring up that I thought about hearing about Extinction Rebellion, I was kind of one of the starter people of Extinction Rebellion Miami. I haven't been as active recently because I have a lot going on, but as support as I can. And I remember about a year or so ago, I actually got to have a few conversations with Roger Hallam, which was like such an honor. But I kept trying to explain to him that Americans have a different mentality, that we really have a problem with the police state. And this was before Cop City happened. This is before Tortuguita. And now there's 69 cop cities. And we see what's happening with the repression of the students. We see like all kind of protesting. And I see like Free Press and Pacifica intrinsically tied in, you know, like in the same, like, without voting and without free press, nothing else is going to be accessible or attainable. No other issue. So I was just wondering if maybe Stephen or Jan or both want to comment on this new, like, and it's what actually TATANKA, I've heard, he phrased it really well once, where he was saying that, you know, they need a justification to have this mass militarization and to have the IDF training our police and these facilities. So is there just any kind of, what do you see like for activists and how we can not have the crap beat out of us and still maintain our freedom of expression? Thank you both so much for your work. Really appreciate you.
Well, Stephen, go ahead, and then we're almost out of time. If you want to get a word in, raise your hand now, please. Steve Starr.
Very quickly, Wendy, thank you for your commentary. I could not agree more with the shadows that we're all facing, but I do think there's a lot of brightness out there. Without going into much detail, but we'll have it on a show in a couple of weeks. There's a platform that's about to be released called Freenet, which is a purely decentralized internet, which prevents any, and I underline the word any, concision or control by any of the major tech players. And that will be, in the interest of freedom of speech, a profound step. And there's a lot more to say about that, but I can save it for some other time. If you want to find out more about it, go to freenet.org and you can learn more about it. And it's a 25-year-old project that is finally coming to fruition that will be in service to freedom of speech, freedom of information all over the world in a way that I'll just say with some authority has never been done before.
All right, let's do it. Very good. Thank you so much, Stephen. We'll have a gathering again next Monday, so maybe you can come back and talk about it with us, and you can plug again. It'll still be prior to the Enemy of the People show, which you'll discuss with us on California Silvertopia this Wednesday. TATANKA, I think you're going to get the last word.
Well, that's really good news to hear that. I didn't know about that development, Stephen. And to answer your question, Wendy, it gets back to we need there is a global nonviolent movement. We need a really strong, a really creative and vibrant nonviolent movement for all these issues. Now, in the light of Reverend Jim Lawson's passing today, he would say the same thing. And, Martin King targeted the areas. I mean, that movement in civil rights was so strong and so vibrant. I haven't experienced anything like it since then. He would target the places where he knew that violence would happen. Of course, they had a media that covered it, right? I mean, there's a lot of discussion about this, but we need a movement that can transcend, they can bring together people with all the issues, a movement that has such a strong vision. And Jim talked about this on the day they opened the Lawson Mile. He said there are two things that aren't being talked about enough. One is we didn't know how exactly or when we're going to get there, but we had hope. We never lost faith that we were going to overcome. And the second thing is, I don't hear enough talk about nonviolence. And, the authorities know how to control violence, so they try to make us participate on that. But with creative nonviolence, they are not in control. Now, it takes a strong movement of solidarity, and it takes people willing to put their lives on the line. But that's where we are. That's where we are on Earth right now. So I'll just say about that. It requires a lot of, talking, but I love being an elder and being with younger people asking those questions, because there's so much that we can do that we don't realize that we can do.
Absolutely. And thank you, TATANKA. There was a question about getting the chat. Steve Caruso, do